on your YouTube, please. I don't have time for this. It's not super hard. So if anyone is able to figure that out, you can even take stuff from the TMP stuff, what people call repository. So if anyone can do this, that will be greatly appreciated, because not everyone got 2 megabit per second connection. Although maybe I could try lowering the bitrate, but I'm not sure if it's a good idea. So yeah, let me check something. Okay, 20 people are watching, by the way. Okay, so the recording will be available after the stream, but right now, sorry, I can't fix the two issues. So how did you end up in Mozilla? Because
oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Huh?
I didn't. I think I cut you off. Did you? Was there more to that question, or did I cut you off?
No, like no, I don't think there was a question, and I don't think you cut me off. I just was talking about YouTube's issues. Okay, so my kind of next question is, how did you end up in Mozilla? Like, I'm pretty sure it's not that easy to get there. So
I kind of came in through the side door as opposed to the front door. Mozilla.
Oops. Damn it. I think there is a problem with Okay, are you here? Yeah, I noted that. You are frozen now. I'm not sure if it's my internet connection, so I'm going to severely restrict this. Hey, Mike, are you here? Okay, YouTube works now. That's great, actually. Hey, Mike. I can't hear you. Okay, now. Okay, maybe. So suddenly you just froze, and now I can see you, but I can't hear you. Okay, let me try calling you again, because it's probably Skype issue. Okay, so I'm just calling at that time. Sorry, everyone. I'm like, hi. I think I was able to hear you. I can't hear you again. Okay. Test. Maybe it's Soundflower issue. Let me check this. Okay, it's probably. I don't know, actually. I don't know. I just need a quick check by looking at some sort of. Maybe I just could try playing something. Maybe just could try playing. Okay, it's probably. Hey.
Hello?
Oh, I can hear you again. I don't know what the problem. It's probably Skype, but yes. Sorry everyone for the technical issue.
Okay.
So
we're back.
Yeah, and you like Skype window froze just after you started talking about how you got into Mozilla.
Okay. So I came in, like I said, through the side door. So there's the Mozilla Foundation, and then that owns the Mozilla Corporation. And back whenever I started, which was in like 2011, I think, there was also Mozilla Messaging. Mozilla Messaging was like spun out of corporation, and I was hired to work for Messaging. And Messaging took care of Thunderbird, basically. And it was also doing like communications experiments. A lot of those experiments didn't really go anywhere, but we tried various things. But I was hired to work on Thunderbird. Specifically, my job, I was hired as a contractor to make Thunderbird be the default email client for Ubuntu. Oniric, I think, was the version that we got it on by default as the default email client. So I was the contractor that they hired because I kind of knew my way around Linux. I kind of knew some people in the Ubuntu community. and they wanted someone to fix bugs that are specific for Ubuntu on Thunderbird, and so they hired me. And then after they had me work on some stuff for a while, they instead of having me be on contract, they just hired me full time for Mozilla messaging. So I worked on Thunderbird for full time, and then corporation swallowed up messaging. Corporation just absorbed it. So that's kind of how I was hired to Mozilla Corporations. I was absorbed. So I didn't. That's how I got in. And so I worked on Thunderbird for a while, and then we started rolling, sort of dialing back staffing on Thunderbird for a bit to distribute people to other projects. I was distributed to the Firefox desktop team, and that's where I've been ever since. So that's how I entered it. I don't think it's the most common route.
Yeah. So now Mozilla. So now you have salary, right?
I am a salaried employee.
But the Mozilla also have many volunteers, people who work for free, which I think is great. So how do you become a volunteer? Because I have a friend who sometimes fixes bugs in Firefox. He's from India, and I know that Mozilla is very friendly to people who want to contribute. So could you please talk a bit about that? How do you become a volunteer, and how do you become maybe a people with a salary? I don't know how to get hired by Mozilla.
Okay, well, I'll start with the how do you become a contributor, is what we would call them, someone who contributes to the project. That's a great question. Thunderbird. Firefox has pretty old school open source roots. I'm not sure if people know this, but it's Mozilla was spun out from Netscape, and it was the open sourcing of the Netscape code was Mozilla, and so Firefox's great grandmother is the Netscape Navigator. So that sort of open source, people diving in and hacking on the browser, it's been happening for a long time. And the best way to do it, if for me, what I would recommend if people want to get involved is to go to this website. What can I do?
Yeah, let's post the link in chat
for Mozilla.
Website.
Yeah, I will put it in the chat. And what can I do for Mozilla.org? Yeah, and what that does is you can use that to find the various things, the various projects that are going. Because Mozilla is there's so much stuff going on. There's a lot of projects that people are spinning up. Today is the first release of Rust, by the way. Rust 1.0, first major release. Yay! So there's a lot of stuff happening, and there's a lot of things for people to contribute to. And this site will help you kind of guide your way around and figure out what you might be interested in hacking on. And then once you find the bottom of this tree, this basically decision tree on this site, it can show you the wiki page, which will allow you to make contact with people, go into the IRC channel. That's kind of how we do it. That's not the only way of doing it though. So I know how people start contributing to Firefox Desktop because I'm a Firefox Desktop hacker, and a lot of time people just kind of show up on Bugzilla. They've got a pet bug or something that really annoys them about Firefox. So they're just I need to get this fixed. I've got a long weekend. Let me just fix it. And they'll just drop a patch in Bugzilla. That sometimes happens, and that's great. We'll happily review those patches. There's also a website that organizes what we call mentored bugs or good first bugs. So these are bugs that we have identified as good bugs for people who are just starting to work with the Firefox and Gecko codebase. Good bugs for them to work on. That I will also put a link to.
Yeah, I think that's what my friend uses to find new bugs.
Yes, Bugs Ahoy is the tool. It's a great tool. You can there's this set of checkboxes along the left that allows you to choose which area of the project you might be interested in contributing to, and then after it queries the bug tracker, it'll spew out the list of mentored bugs. And then whenever you comment in the bug, you kind of have to create a Bugzilla account. But you can use any email address you want, but you create a Bugzilla account, and then you comment in the bug, say, I will want to work on this one. And there's a mentor for most, if not all of these bugs who will say, great, and then they will guide you through it. And we love that at Mozilla. Contributors are the best. probably they are the most passionate part of the project, are the contributors who just like are doing it because they believe in the mission, or they like the product, or they want to see it do a certain thing. They want to see it be faster, they want to see it implement a certain API, or they want to see it like be a little more flexible, or this, that, and the other. So that's whenever you see the passion in people, and they write patches, and a lot of there are definitely people who have started contributing to Mozilla to try and I'm going to try and transition to your other question, which is how do you become hired? There are people definitely who have been like longtime contributors, and at some point Mozilla goes, well, shoot, I mean, you clearly like you're valuable. You're doing stuff that we feel like we should pay you for. So why don't we just make it official? I've seen that happen. It doesn't happen for everybody, but it's happened. I mean, we're still a pretty small company, so it doesn't happen all the time, but periodically we'll see someone go, you know what, if we have the money, we should do what we can to pay these people, because holy smokes. And it's happened. Go ahead.
But how do Mozilla get money? Is it all donations?
No, and it's kind of complicated. So there's the corporation, and then there's the foundation. Messaging is gone, and I don't actually know the details. Like this is from a pedestrian standpoint, from someone who watches on the sidelines. I'm pretty sure that the foundation takes donations because we're a nonprofit, but the nonprofit part, the Mozilla Foundation, owns the corporation, and the corporation is able to like make business deals with people like Yahoo or Google in the past, or Yandex, or et cetera, for revenue, like search revenue referral, business things like that. So like, that's, I think, a humongous percentage of corporation income is from the search deal, but that's like, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I don't look at the charts, but I do know that as a not-for-profit or non-profit, I'm not sure which we are, and I don't really know what the distinction between those two are, but we do have to publish like our financials and make them public. So if you, somewhere that's posted on probably a wiki page, or it's like if you Yahoo it or Google it or Yandex it, you can find our like financials where we like tell people, here's where the money came from, here's what it is. That can tell you where it's coming from, but I'm pretty sure the majority of corporations' revenue comes from the search revenue. But for the foundation, we can't just like fork that money over the corporation, or sorry, to the foundation. I don't think it works that way. The foundation needs to raise donations. They have to. That's how the foundation raises money, and then they have to like grants. The foundation raises money via donations, and then they like start education programs with that money, and they do outreach with that money, and they sponsor various things, like I said, grants, and they do workshops and maker events, etc., in various Mozilla spaces, and they like, it's all kind of complicated, and there's like tax stuff going on. But to answer your question, how do we make money? Donations and search revenue certainly help, and then there are like some smaller things that occur that brings money in at Mozilla, and then we don't like, the money is used for like keeping the lights on, paying for events for contributors, paying for like basically paying for engineers and staffing, property stuff. That's what goes on.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, it's really interesting because I never really. I mean, I knew that Mozilla.
To answer your question, how do we?
Oops, sorry.
Donations and
But I was making sure that YouTube works.
And then there are like
sorry. Stop that, YouTube. Okay, so that's really interesting because I knew that Mozilla does search deals, but I kind of didn't put two and two together. I mean, that's really interesting structure. That there is foundation, there is corporation. So there is a question in chat: is JavaScript enough for solving certain bugs, or do you need C++ knowledge?
Is JS enough for solving certain bugs? Absolutely it is. Believe it or not, the front end of Firefox and Thunderbird, and, well, mostly Firefox and Thunderbird, the front end is mostly written in JavaScript. So I remember I was quite surprised when I kind of popped the hood. I started making like add-ons whenever I was in school. I made an add-on, a silly add-on for Firefox that like counts the number of words there are on the page, and I was really, really surprised when I started looking at the browser code, because I like checked out the code and I examined the source tree, and it's very large and complicated, but the part that runs the UI of the browser is JavaScript. And that blew my mind, because up until that point I thought JavaScript was like, well, you use it to like make stuff move on a page maybe, or like to do some Ajax stuff. But we use it to run the UI of the browser, and also kind of like the glue layer of the browser between the back and the front end is sometimes JavaScript as well. So certainly there are plenty of bugs that you can fix with just JavaScript. We also, a lot of our theming is done with CSS, and a lot of our like UI is written in a kind of a weird XML language called Zool, XUL. But some of it's also done using HTML. We're trying to migrate away from Zool to HTML. Kind of want to like eat the dog food, basically. Like the dream would be that the entire UI is written using HTML and powered by JavaScript and themed with CSS. That's kind of the dream, because then we are basically powered by the web in order to show the web. And we've been trying to like preach the web as this thing that like you can do anything on the web, and yet here we are using Zool and stuff. So clearly we've got some work to do. So we kind of need to walk the walk if we're going to talk the talk. So there is this effort, this slow but certain effort to try and transition more of our UI away from Zool to HTML. So long story short, someone just asked whether or not that would slow down the browser. Well, it depends. I mean, like there are certain things that you want to do. It could potentially, but you have to identify what the slow things are. Like you can't just say that HTML is slow, the DOM is slow. It depends on what you're doing, and you profile and you figure out, well, shoot, I'm like adding all of these elements and I'm causing a reflow every time. Yes, that's going to be slow. If I'm causing the page to like recalculate the dimensions of everything every time, but there are ways of making that faster. The fact that it's written in JavaScript and HTML and CSS in our minds makes it easier for new people to contribute. And the more we empower, like the faster we make the web, the faster our browser UI becomes. Like the faster we make the SpiderMonkey JavaScript engine, the faster we can make the browser front end. As soon as we make developments in the SpiderMonkey engine to like add new cool ECMAScript 6 stuff or ECMAScript 7 stuff, people on the front end can start using it, and that's pretty cool. We get to use kind of the cool new things. Like promises are this thing that you may have heard of that aren't technically new anymore, but I believe it's part of some spec, and they're available now in like the browser JavaScript. We throw promises around all over the place, and various other things. And we're trying ES6. Someone just said it's part of the ES6 spec. Thank you. That sounds right. So. And now we're able to use that in the front end, and that's pretty nice. So to answer your question, I've kind of been rambling. If you know web technology, if you know JavaScript, if you know CSS, if you know HTML, or even if you just kind of like tinkered around with a website, or even if you don't know most of these things, that's okay. Like come hang out, come talk to us. Maybe we can like point you some documentation and coach you through it, and we can figure it out together. That's kind of what the mentors are for. They'll connect you with documentation, and they'll tell you like, here's how I would kind of approach it. Here's what this means. Here's where the section of the code I would recommend you look at, to try and like be the human shield, so that you don't get bombarded with all the craziness that is the rest of the code base, and you can sort of focus on fixing your bug. Again, that was a long, rambly answer. I hope I answered the question.
I just tried to find. I think there was a demo. Someone put Firefox UI in browser.
Yes.
And there was a demo, but I can't find it. I tried to find it now.
So there is someone at Mozilla working on trying to make the browser UI, like basically trying to clone the browser front end using HTML, and I have a link to it. I think it's called browser.html now.
Okay, let's see.
And let me see where it is. Here, I just put a link to it in the chat.
Okay, so I found it. Great.
And it's still
cool demo.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, that's the kind of the dream. Like, I don't know if what kind of APIs we need to still expose in order for this to be practical, but as an experiment, I think it's a really good idea to sort of see what's still lacking in the web platform in order to make, making a big complex program like a web browser like work with web technology. That's kind of something like what we did with Firefox OS, where we said, well, we think the web should be able to power anything, so let's see if it can power a phone. And we had to like devise all of these new APIs so that it could talk to the radio, or it could talk to the dialer and the contacts database and all these things. And got them all spec'd out, and we went through the W3C and all this business, and now these DOM APIs exist, and that's kind of what we want to do. We want to develop and grow the web platform, because in the end, that's what Firefox and Firefox OS and Mozilla is really for, to grow the web platform and to keep it open and safe and sensical, and basically to keep it the people's, so that not one organization can kind of jump in and say, well, this is what the web's going to be now, which is kind of what Microsoft was doing when they had 90% browser market share in the late 90s. They basically gave up on the web and said, well, this is what the web's going to be from now on, and they gave up on it. And then Firefox went, well, it doesn't have to be that way. Let's try some other things. And that's, I think, the idea. Again, I think I went off on a tangent. I'm really good at going off on tangents. If you need me to like veer back on track, let me know. Also, I'm going to blow my nose. I've got seasonal allergies.
Okay.
All right, go for it.
So there were some questions from Twitch, so pass them into the chat. What are your thoughts on ES6/7 and web components, especially CSS and web components?
I think ES6 and ES7 are awesome. I recently built, as kind of like a little pet project, because I couldn't sleep one night, I built this like web-based soundboard for my stream, for whenever I'm gonna like do Joy of Coding, is what I call my live stream. And you know how wacky morning radio DJs will be like ruh-roh, or like bidoo bidoo, or like they'll play sounds and stuff. I built one using web technology, using Node and like Express and all this like really cool new technology that I haven't been able to do because I haven't been in web development in a long time. So I've heard of these things, and I thought they were they're pretty cool. So I tried them out, and they are pretty cool. This is my first time building a Node project, and I missed all the ES7 stuff, because in the browser code we're using the new stuff all the time. As soon as the JavaScript team says, yeah, this thing is stable to use, we're using it everywhere. And as soon as I started to do this Node stuff, I realized, well, I don't have a lot of my ES6 stuff anymore, and I really miss it. It's really awkward. Like, there are certain things that I just miss from ES6 and ES7. And so there's this tool called Babel, which some of you may have heard of. It's this transpiler thing that will take your code written with ES6 and ES7 and like transpile it back into current shipped JavaScript so that other browsers and like old school V8, which Node is currently running, can interpret it. And that was really helpful. So to answer the question, again, to wrap back around and answer the question directly, I do think ES6 and ES7 are very cool. I'm a big fan. It is painful to go back. And so if I were to if I were to put together a website right now, I would definitely use something like Babel to transpile my code, because I'm just so used to ES6 and ES7, and it hurts to go back.
And there was a question about Firefox OS Phone. So do you use Firefox OS Phone?
I have used one in the past. There are definitely people in the office who use them. I'm on a network in Canada called Wind Mobile, and currently we don't have any devices that will speak to the frequencies that Wind Mobile is on. And I'm kind of a cheapskate. I don't want to have like 2 data plans or 2 phone plans. So I'm waiting until I can like find some time to port Firefox OS to this device. This is a Nexus 5, I think. So I'm going to see if I can, there's a long weekend in Canada coming up. Who knows? Maybe I'll do it over that. Maybe I'll brick my phone. We'll see. But I definitely do want to try it out and dog food it as much as I can. Is it at parity with like iOS or Android yet? Absolutely. Like, from my perspective, not really, not yet. I mean, it needs more work. It's a pretty young operating system. It needs more apps in the marketplace. Yeah, we need more attention on it. This is just, again, my opinion. But it's getting there. I mean, we went from it's impossible to make a phone with web technology to shipping a phone in like a bunch of countries on the planet powered by the web. And that's pretty cool. And I think recently a TV is now, Panasonic TV is using Firefox OS. And that's cool to see the web on these devices that where, you know, or like web powering these devices in a way that like we didn't see 2-3 years ago. And that's kind of a neat feeling, because I remember there was some kind of like Moz Camp, which we hold periodically, where a bunch of contributors get together. And I remember someone going, I want to see Firefox OS on my TV. And a lot of people went like, you're crazy. And yet yesterday or the day before, like they started shipping in Europe. And so sometimes the crazy ideas happen. And sometimes the crazy ideas are the best. And I think there's still more to be played. This hand is not fully out yet. Like, we haven't just like released Firefox OS and we're done with it. I think there's still more work to do to try and find ways of making it competitive, to try and bring it to North America. I know it's in parts of Europe and Asia and Africa right now, and South America. I don't think it's really in North America yet, and I think I don't know if that's on the horizon, but I would love to see it in North America. So I think there's still a lot of work to do, and if that's a thing that interests you, it's all open source. Like, come check it out. Come hack on Firefox OS. There's a GitHub repository for it. We take pull requests. If maybe you want to make the dialer do something neat, go hack on it. The front end of Firefox OS is called Gaia, and there is a B2G. So B2G is the name of that's the unbranded name of the operating system, is boot to gecko, or B2G. And the repositories for all of the code that I've been talking about, I just put in the chat. And that's like the account that hosts all those repositories. And Gaia is the name of the front end. And that's all JavaScript and HTML and CSS. Like, you can rewrite the dialer in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, and like submit a pull request if you've got like a really cool idea or a neat design. Like, do it.
So there was a question from Tos Marcel. He has some opinion on inclusion of some binary globes, and so, well, probably not. He's not very happy about it.
No, I don't think any of us are.
So what's your opinion on these binary blobs like DRM?
Okay. Again, I should preface, these are my opinions. I'm not like an official Mozilla representative here who's been like, I am representing Mozilla or anything. This is just me, my opinions, and they're my own. So I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And we lost a battle is what happened. And I'm not sure if we ever could have won the battle. Right now, I don't know what our market share currently is, but even at its peak market share, I think we were something at like, maybe, I don't know what we've been at, but like all of the other competitors already shipped it. Like, Internet Explorer already ships this thing. Chrome already ships this thing. Pretty sure Safari already ships this thing. Like, all the other browsers do it, and you kind of need it in order to run things like Netflix or various things on YouTube, I believe. I'm pretty sure YouTube wants to start using it for various things. And we really didn't like it. And we fought really, really hard, but they shipped it, and then they submitted the spec to the W3C. I'm pretty sure is how it went down. Like, it was already out the door. And then as like an afterthought, they're like, oh, I guess we'll standardize. And that really blew, because we know that people are going to go, like, your average user, bless their hearts, your average user doesn't really care about DRM or EME. They just want to like watch Netflix, which is totally understandable. And like, if we die valiantly on the hill and say like, no, we will not ship this thing, it is wrong, we are morally opposed, what that shows ends up like, the user result is, oh, I can't watch Netflix, so I guess I'll use some other browser. And that hurts Mozilla, because the more people who are using our browser, the more market share we have, the greater an influence we have on things like the W3C, and we can do things like negotiate, like various things, like Dart, for example. I know that the Dart language, or no, I got a better example. Native Client from Google. They wanted to ship this thing called Native Client, which was like a replacement for the old NPAPI plugins. And I'm pretty sure Microsoft said, no, let's not do it. And I don't think Apple was ever going to do it. Again, these are just all hearsay. These are what I've heard, in my opinion. And Mozilla also said, no, like plugins are not the future. We still regret Flash. Like Flash hangs the browser, it crashes the browser. We've done everything we can to like protect our users from it, and yet it's still this big problem. And we want to move people off of Flash. And so like adding a new like type of plugin that allows direct access to like the like basically running machine code at such a low level. I don't know. This is not a very good technical explanation of it, but they tried to ship that, and they wanted it to be something that the other browsers did, and we were able to say no. And if we had said yes, then all of a sudden, like suppose for a second we thought it was a great idea, and Chrome starts shipping it, and Firefox starts shipping it. That's when the others usually come on board. We're kind of like a swing vote. Whenever like someone proposes a technology, they're kind of depending on the other browsers. From what I see, they're depending on the other browsers to like do it, to like ship a spec. And like when the W3C standardizes something, we kind of have like the browsers can choose whether or not to support it, but to be like HTML5 compliant or like whatever part of the spec it is compliant, you have to implement it the way the spec says, is my understanding. And so, where am I going with this? Basically, we're a vote at the table of what kind of technology succeeds and what kind of technology should not succeed. And we lost this battle with EME and DRM because the other browsers just shipped it. They just went for it because like they don't care. They like, to them it's, in my opinion, money plays a big part of it. But I also think that, like I'm not just thinking that they're like really evil and they only love money, but also they want their users to be able to watch Netflix and YouTube and Twitch or whatever it is, whatever's using EME right now. And I can understand that, but there are better ways, but they didn't go with the better ways. There are certainly better ways, but they didn't go for it. And the companies that like provide the content also didn't go for the better ways. I think DRM is something that they find comfortable and it feels safe to them. And even though it's like, it's very easy to circumvent. If I can view it and listen to it, I can record it, and now I have it. And yet, to them, it's like, okay, we've done our best effort to like protect our content, and but like there are better ways, but they didn't go for it. So we kind of had to do it. Our arm was twisted, and we kind of held our nose. I think one blog post on the internet, I think it was TechCrunch, was like, plugged our nose and did it because we kind of had no choice. People want to watch Netflix. They want to watch YouTube. We did everything we could to protect our user, though. So, for example, the binary that's doing all the decryption is run inside an open source sandbox with very low privileges. That's in order to prevent any kind of, or to mitigate as best we can, any kind of like hostile action from this binary decryption module that's coming down from, in this case, Adobe. I don't believe Adobe would ever do anything hostile to us or to their users, but Flash gets owned all the time. So we sandbox it, and we have also released a version of Firefox that does not have the DRM in it. I think there was a blog post about it a couple of days ago. I think that was on some news site, something. And we're trying our best, but we also have to make sure that people just don't get angry with us because we don't play Netflix. And we kind of toyed with the idea, I think, of like not showing the video and saying like, the reason that this video is not playing is because of DRM. And we thought, well, maybe we can educate the user. We can use this as a learning moment, and we can pressure the content providers to use a different technology, one that doesn't require these like weird binary things to be downloaded to decrypt. And that really didn't scan. People were like, during I think our testing, I believe there was some testing done, and people went, oh well, I guess it's broken. And to them, of course it is, because the words DRM and EME and all of these sort of technical terms they don't make any sense to the common user. And why should they make any sense? They just want to watch Orange is the New Black or something. They just want to watch Netflix, which I can understand. My parents are the same way. Like I use my parents as like my test bed, and I think like, what would my parents believe if they saw this particular thing, or if they saw a box that said this is all DRM'd up and you can't watch it? Is they'd probably open up another browser. They thought, oh, Firefox is broken. I'll tell Mike, and then I'll open another browser. So that's kind of like it's not much of a compromise. We lost. That's what happened. We lost. And it sucks. It really does suck. No one's happy about it. I don't think anyone here is like, yay, we shipped it. We're like, shoot, we shipped it. We had to. We had no choice. It blows.
Okay, so yeah, apparently you convinced just Marcel that Mozilla isn't turning evil.
Of course not. Why would we? Why would we do it? Like, why? What is the point? We are a not-for-profit. Like, we don't have shareholders. It's not possible. Like, I can understand some shareholder at like a big company being like, you've got to do this because I've got shares in, I don't know, some media company, and trust me, you want to ship this or else I'm going to sell all my shares and your stock's going to plummet. We don't have that kind of pressure. The goal is to serve the manifesto, to serve the mission, to serve the web, and to make sure that people can have an alternative to view the web. But we also have to make sure it's a good experience or else people won't use us. And so you kind of have to make these trade-offs. And when you lose one, like we lost this one, it really blows and everyone feels it. Like that, this feels like a loss for the web. And I don't think the battle is over yet. Like, there are really good alternatives out there. Because, like, I'm of the belief that if you own something, you should own it. Like, if I purchased a movie on iTunes or something, I should be able to, like, copy it, hold on to it, keep archives of it in case my machine goes down. I understand the perspective of the content owner, because it's more like a video rental place. Remember video rental places? Like, it's morally a lot less defensible to be like, I should be able to copy rental DVDs or rental movies. I think that's morally far less defensible than I bought this thing and I should be able to copy it. So I understand the perspective of the content providers and the content makers. You know, they want to be paid for their work. I understand. I've got family in show business. I know what that's like. It's sometimes a hard racket. But there are better ways.
Okay, so So I know there is Firefox Hello, which is kind of like Skype, but within Firefox. It works differently because it's not quite Skype. You can share a link,
yep,
and people can join. So it's somewhat kind of like Skype, or maybe kind of like Google Hangouts. It works differently. So what other cool projects Mozilla are working on right now?
Let's see.
Like in your opinion.
So I can tell you what I'm working on right now. So like I've had my head in this for like a year. I'm working on Electrolysis, which is the cross-process, like the multiple content process project, so that your web content is running in a separate process than the browser UI and the browser process. And that's something that, you know, the competing browsers, I'm pretty sure Internet Explorer ships it. I know Chrome ships it. I would not be surprised if Opera, now that they're a Chromium fork, is doing it. So like it's something that we've seen to actually be like, there are very interesting benefits to that model. Particularly, it's if you can sandbox and kind of lock down the content process, and that's not a silver bullet. That's not like, okay, you're safe from all the evil web ever, but it's a lot better than no bullets. A normal bullet is better than no bullets, and the idea of sandboxing the content process is very appealing. As well, the content process, in most cases, can't block the main browser process. So the main browser UI becomes more responsive as a result. So right now, it's not so amazing. So it's currently on nightly. So we have Electrolysis on by default on nightly, which is our nightly builds of Firefox. So if you're using Firefox nightlies, you're probably using Electrolysis. So your content is all being rendered in a separate process, rendered and processed, etc. And periodically, you'll see this like big white spinner, which blows. I hate that thing. I hate it so much. And that there's like a lot of performance work still to do because we've been focusing more on correctness than performance. And I'm sort of we're getting to the point in our bugs now that we can start leaning more towards performance, because that's generally how at least I work on things, is make them correct, write tests, make them work, get people testing it, and now let's make it fast. Let's see what kind of optimizations we can make. And so we're just starting to look at optimizations that we can start to make this zippy. But the idea is that if the content process crashes, your browser stays up, but just the browser tab goes down, which is a nice result. The UI becomes more responsive. We can lock down the process with a sandbox. And I think those are the main benefits. There might be others. But like this is something that Firefox and Gecko have been trying to ship for like forever. And like things will come up like, we're working in Electrolysis, but now we have to ship an operating system for we have to ship Firefox OS, so let's put Electrolysis on hold. Let's make an operating system. We're working on Electrolysis, but now we have to work on a browser for Android. Okay, hold up. Let's build a browser for Android that works properly. Okay, so I think this is the time that it's actually going to stick. Like we have a dedicated team of people working on this right now. And I think when we're done, when we finally ship to users, fingers crossed, it's going to make the browser more performant, more stable, more safe for our users. And that, to me, is very exciting. And maybe I'm only saying that because I've been working on this thing for like a year and I really want it to ship. And that's why I'm so excited. Like, it might be really boring to other people, but that's the most important. Like, I wake up every day and go, like, I really want it to ship today. So we're getting there. I don't know when it'll ship, but we're getting down to the last couple of bugs. So I don't want to give a timeline, but we're certainly a lot closer to shipping than we were a year ago. Like people are using it every day on the nightly version. I believe it's going to be opt-in on the developer edition in a couple of days when the new version of the developer edition goes out. So people can try it and report bugs, because we definitely need people to report bugs and figure stuff out. One of the big problems with it, though, and sorry for going down this rabbit hole, is add-ons. A lot of add-ons have not been designed to work with multiple processes. They will assume that they have synchronous access to web content from the browser, like that they can kind of like reach into the DOM of the web content and like tweak things or read how the form's doing. And that made sense back when it was in the same process. But now that's in a separate process and the content is not allowed to block the parent. That's not like that kind of model doesn't really scan anymore. So we have these shims to still allow it to happen, but it's not great and it hurts the browser performance. It basically feels like, it basically eliminates the usefulness of the fact that it's running out of process performance-wise, because the whole browser will jank. By jank, I mean like it'll hang for a very short amount of time so that we don't paint. And that it feels slow, it feels sluggish, and that's because the add-ons have not been designed to work properly with Electrolysis. So we're trying to find ways of mitigating that, and one way we're doing that is like we'll uplift it to Aurora so that they know it's coming, and we'll try and do a lot of messaging to say like, hey, add-on authors, please start porting your add-ons. Here's a ton of documentation. Do you need help? Come join this IRC channel. We will help you. Do you need a pull request? I can issue you a pull request. Where's your code? Is it closed source? That's fine. Add me to your private repository. I promise I won't tell anyone. Just like allow us to make your add-on work with E10S so that we can ship this thing. Because if we ship it and everyone's add-ons break, like that's the worst, because people rely on their add-ons to like do the things that they need to do in their browser. The whole idea of the add-on ecosystem is to make the browser your own. And if we break all of that, well, shoot, like what's the point? So it's kind of that's the tricky part right now is add-ons. And there are some people far smarter than I who are working on that very hard problem right now.
Okay, so you are very serious about backward compatibility, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
We have to be pragmatic. Like,
yeah,
we definitely don't want to break all the add-ons. But if this add-on has 100 users, well, okay. Like, I don't know how. Like, maybe we can rewrite it I think we prioritize that far lower than like the top 50 add-ons.
Yeah, it makes sense. Maybe it's time to force this developer to port his add-on. So Firefox has a big old code base. Is it difficult to work with it?
Sometimes. Sorry, go ahead. The rest of your question.
Yeah, like what are some of the issues?
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Let me just take a quick drink. So, and like as with any large code base, I think large mature code base that's like, I think over a decade old at this point. Like there are parts of it that are brand spanking new. It's not like we're working with decade old code all the time. We're writing new code all the time and replacing stuff. But there are certainly parts of the code that are like pretty ancient. And sometimes like one or two people maybe knows how part of that works. Like I don't think there's a single person. Maybe there's like one or two people who are like legendary who know how the whole system works. I certainly don't. I don't know how the system works. And so one of the problems is like you'll go into a section of the code and go like, I have no idea how any of this works. The documentation doesn't exist. This is this old holdover from like 1999. I don't know why it's here. What does this mean? Like you kind of feel like you're dealing with this Jenga pile. Like, if I pull this out, will something explode? No one knows. And so you kind of have to test and do your due diligence, investigate, try things, try removing things. You kind of want to make sure that the code is in a better state when you're done than when you started, and document where you can, write documentation so that the next person doesn't get really upset with you. That can be challenging for an older code base. But one of the nice things about an old code base is that there are certain things that have really been fine-tuned, like there are certain areas of the code base where we know this works, it's battle-hardened, it's mature, and it's getting better over time. Like that, it's growing, it's improving. Like the JavaScript engine, SpiderMonkey, is like it goes back. I'm pretty sure it was the first web JavaScript engine. If not, its ancestor was the first JavaScript engine, and it's gone through a bunch of iterations, and like parts of it get ripped out and put back in, et cetera, et cetera. And so technically, it's one of the oldest parts of Gecko, which is the browser engine. But it's it's still like there's a lot of activity on it. Like ES6, ES7 implementations are all getting written all the time. We have a huge team that work on making it faster, doing optimizations like ASM.js. All of this is like ASM.js. And it's nice. Like it's nicely tested. It's been out there for so long that people have been testing it, and we've got a nice suite of tests, and people notice when it breaks, and so that's nice. So it can be challenging, and having people depend on the old code can be challenging. Like I just refactored, if you've been watching Joy of Coding, I just recently refactored a really old section of the code base that allows you to view the source of a web page. So, excuse me. And while doing that, there was like a bunch of like global methods that were exposed or global functions that were exposed, and I didn't want to break all the add-ons that may have been relying on them. So I exposed them, but I put like deprecation warnings in all of them, so that at least people know like this stuff might go away soon. If you really care about it, switch to the new stuff. You can still use the old stuff, and we try and do it that way. But sometimes you kind of have to just look at who's consuming this API. If it's like a small number of people, sometimes we just go screw it. It's not the engineering time. Like we are small. We're very small. We don't have a whole lot of time. There's not anyone who's just kind of sitting around spinning in their chairs. We have so much work to do, and we're up against competitors who are humongous, and we don't have time to just sit around. And so we kind of have to be pragmatic and say, like, is it worth it? Is it worth putting engineering time into this backwards compatibility? Only 100 people are using this API with this one add-on. No. So we drop it. And that's just kind of being pragmatic, I guess.
Yeah.
It sucks for that 100 people if they really rely on that add-on, but then hopefully someone steps up from that group and like they'll build a new version or they'll retrofit the old one or something.
So what about C++ 11? Do you use C++ 11 and C++ 14?
I think we started using some 11 features recently. So I will just cards on the table. I've only been using C++ for about a year, and I feel like such a noob still. Like I did some in school, and I made very simple programs that were more like indistinguishable from C programs, probably. And things like memory management really scare me, and like whether or not I'm passing by reference or by value. What does that ampersand even mean in this context? Like, I don't know, and it's scary stuff. And so I think reading like some of the mailing lists, because there's this mailing list called Dev Platform, which I will link to, where we talk about things going on in the platform. And I believe there's a list or there's a post about using C++ 11 stuff in there, but I don't think we're using anything newer than that, because we need to support, like, I think GCC, a particular version of GCC or something, and I know a lot of people are starting to move towards Clang to build, and that's helping a lot. I remember whenever I switched from GCC to Clang on my OS X machine, I went from like 45-minute build times to like 15-minute build times for some reason, and I was really, really happy about that. I think linking is a lot faster with Clang, and like I don't actually know the specifics. I'm mostly just talking out of my butt, but like I believe we do use some C++ 2011 or C++ 11 stuff. But in what I just linked to in the chat, there is a PSA. New C++ 11 features are made available, and we've recently dropped support for GCC 4.6 in Gecko 38. So we are using some C++ 11 stuff. I have no idea what that stuff is, but reading it looks like
I need to check that.
Member initializers, template aliases, delegated constructors, override and final as C++ keywords. So great. That stuff. There are like a lot of subtleties with C++ and that I don't understand. I know enough to get my job done, but it's definitely not my first language. I would say I'm far more comfortable with JavaScript. Even today, I'm working on this bug, and I'm trying to figure out a way of doing it, and I'm just like screaming out for promises. I'm like, please give me promises in C, because I'm trying to do all this asynchronous stuff, and I know exactly how I do this in JavaScript, but I can't do it that way in C, at least not how I'd like to do it. So
it looks like you can use a lot of C++ features. Like especially auto-thin, lambdas. Well, this is just some niceness.
Today I learned we can use lambdas. I should probably read this document.
You can use for-range loops, which is great. So I think that when I was programming in C++, I really wanted to use all these three features, namely auto, lambdas, and for-range loop. And there are some other niceness, but they're less important. I wonder what about move stuff. Was it a smooth transition? Like, did it require a lot of testing? Because even though C++ standardization committee is pretty serious about backward compatibility, they still broke it in certain points. They were very careful about that, but C++ 11 isn't entirely backward compatible with C++ 98. And wait a second, 98.
Okay.
And so there is some technical issue, but the stream works for me.
Okay. I do know that there's at least one fellow in this office who goes to like the C++ standardization meetings. Like, he's our representative. He'll fly out and he'll talk to other like language developers, and they'll like figure out what's going on and what's coming up with C++, and what's going to be released. So that fellow will often report back and say like, here's what's coming, which is very helpful. And sometimes we'll do like a mass like change. Like, we'll switch. I remember there was this change from like using null to using something called null PTR, which I guess is, so there was this big change to use null to null PTR, and we just like, I think there was this humongous, like, a script was written to do it for us, and no one reviewed those patches because it's like the worst. Those kinds of patches are the worst to review, and we just kind of like ran the script, saw if it built, and I think it was mostly smooth. There were probably some like small little silly things that got broken, but once for the most part it works. And you identify the small cases where things went horribly wrong, and then you fix those. And then that's kind of how we do it. Is we'll do like a search and replace sometimes, or we'll have a macro that will be able to transition us. Like before we could use override, we had something called Moz override, which is like a macro that I guess does the same thing as C++11's override. And I have no idea. Again, I don't really know what this stuff is, but I think it was just, again, a search and replace, switching from Moz override to override, switching from Moz final to final, and etc. And I don't know what I really don't know what those things do. I should probably learn at some point. Again, I know other people, smarter people, review my code, and then they go, oh yeah, you should probably be using final there, and I go, okay, great, and then I just do it. But okay. I'm far more comfortable in JavaScript. That's where I'm most useful, I think. And that's probably where I really contribute to the project is writing JavaScript, in my mind.
That's really interesting. I mean, now PTR is a really tiny change. Probably looks like Firefox codebase is really huge because it's like a pretty much trivial change. It should, it changes things when you call an overloaded function in a very special case, like it's an edge case. It's very interesting that there are such edge cases in.
I assume Mozilla there were edge cases because nothing ever goes smoothly, but maybe there weren't. Maybe it went smoothly. Maybe it's a piece of cake. I have no idea. I know that there was like a bunch of patches landed, and then we were using null pointer now. Like a message went out. No one used null. Null pointer only. If you're using C++, null pointer only. And all the reviewers were alerted. Like if you see null, R-, like say no, you can't use that. Yeah.
Alright. So what do you use for code review? What tool do you use for code review?
So, for the longest time before I got here, they were just like attaching patches to Bugzilla, and people would like manually look at the diff, which is pretty bad. I mean, any code review is better than no code review, but that's pretty bad. That's like banging rocks together. Hopefully, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. The next step was there was a Bugzilla plugin used called Splinter, which adds very basic code review functionality to Bugzilla. A lot of people still use that. We're starting to migrate to another tool that I'm actually a contributor to this project called ReviewBoard, which is a web-based code review tool. It's written in Python.
ReviewBoard is great, by the way. You should, to other people who are watching this now, you should check it.
Reviewboard.org. It's open source.
That's what we used in Yandex when I was working there. So it's pretty great. I recommend this.
Yep. And
so sorry for interrupting you. Just wanted to tell that's a great tool.
Well, thanks. Glad to hear it. I'll tell the core developers. There's some like customizations that we're trying to do with ReviewBoard. So like we don't want to upload patches to ReviewBoard. We want to push to a repository and have it show up. So we've like
we had this too in Yandex. So yeah.
Yeah, we're building and open sourcing that bit, and there are a bunch of like extensions in ReviewBoard. I'm not sure if Yandex ever used ReviewBoard extensions, but I helped build that thing. I helped build ReviewBoard extensions as part of my GSOC project back in forever ago. But like, so we're starting to use ReviewBoard more and more, but it's like we just started trying it, and there are a lot of rough edges still. But I think the eventual goal is to use ReviewBoard. And there are like at Mozilla, there's not like a message comes down from on high like we're all using ReviewBoard now, so stop using Splinter. I know that there are messages saying stop using null, use null pointer, but no one will tell you what tool you have to use. And as such, everyone uses it. Like lots of people use different things. Like there are projects at Mozilla using GitHub and GitHub pull requests and doing the review on GitHub. There are teams using this like Opera Critic, and that's another code review tool. I know that there's another tool that people are trying out called Fabricator from Facebook. So like a team will like form around a tool and they'll try it out, and like the best idea will kind of win, but sometimes it doesn't, and then you have two ideas. Like there are people at Mozilla. Our code is mostly held within Mercurial, with the sole exception of like the boot to Gecko stuff is how on GitHub. Although I do think we definitely hold the repository on locally on GitHub as well, or on our own Git server as well. But people will use Mercurial and Git simultaneously because it's just what they're familiar with, and we don't want to mandate you have to use this tool because some people are just really used to Git, and we don't want to have them waste time trying to figure out the nuances of Mercurial. So it's like, okay, well, here's this extension for Git or this script for Git that allows you to push to Mercurial using Git, whatever, and we've open sourced it. Or here, issue your pull request to GitHub for Gecko, and we'll somehow transmute it into something that Mercurial and MozReview can read. Like, I think these are goals at some point to have all commits go through this MozReview tool and kind of pick them out from the world. So if you like issue a Bitbucket pull request, if such a thing exists, we'll grab that. If you issue a GitHub pull request, we'll grab that. And like just lower the barrier of entry so that whatever tool people are used to will kind of in the end interface with MozReview, and we don't have to keep having these religious wars about Mercurial versus Git. Like, just use whatever you want and just get your work done is more the idea.
So I was watching your stream a couple of weeks ago, and you were using Mercurial, but at the same time, there are some repositories that are on GitHub. So, like, speaking about version control and repositories, what tools do Mozilla use?
So, Mercurial, Git. When I started, I think for the longest time we were using CVS, and then I got... But then, like, before I showed up, they switched, like, back when they switched, they wanted to switch off of CVS to something new, and they're like, Git and Mercurial were neck and neck at the time. No one knew who's going to win. And I think we like, flipped a coin, and someone went, we'll go with Mercurial. And we went with Mercurial. And GitHub happened, and Git became hugely popular. And Bitbucket existed, but wasn't nearly as popular. And people showed up knowing Git, and then we've got Mercurial and stuff. So like, we use Mercurial a lot, but we allow the use of Git. Like, we have tools to convert between the two. I know there was a team using Bazaar for a while. I'm pretty sure. Like, I think Bugzilla actually uses Bazaar still. I don't know why, but they do. Although they may have moved off of it, I'm not entirely sure. But I'm at least at one point it was using Bazaar. And that's the only ones I can think of are those three. We don't use any of the closed source ones. We try and make sure that the tools we're using are open source. So Perforce or ClearCase or Plastic or anything like that, I don't think we use those or have ever used those.
Okay, so that's really interesting. About using different tools and okay.
It's sometimes chaotic because someone will be like, I have this problem. I can't pull from your repository. And you go, well, show me your HG config. And they go, well, I'm not using HG. I'm using this weird thing. And you go, oh shoot. All right, well, I guess we got to build you some kind of adapter or something. Or maybe you should learn Mercurial, or have you heard of Git or anything like that. Like, sometimes it's chaotic when everyone has their own tools. But we've also found that, at least in my experience, when you tell an engineer you have to use this tool, a lot of engineers don't like take that well. Like, they want to use the tools that they're familiar with. You don't want to tell them you have to use this editor, you have to use this IDE, you have to do this, you have to do that. And so there's this trade-off between having to use, there's like what's the analogy? Carrot and stick. Sometimes it's just easier to use one thing, even though we allow the use of another thing. It's just easier to use this thing, but we try and allow the other thing as well. We don't like try and actively prevent people from using a certain thing. We'll just make it a lot easier for one thing. And if they want to make it easier for this other tool, great, do it. And I guess the most popular one will win. It's very Darwinian.
That's actually really interesting.
And chaotic.
Yeah. I guess there are downsides and upsides. So are there any difficulties in like doing cross-platform development?
Yeah, totally.
Lots of them.
So the Gecko platform kind of tries to abstract away a lot of the differences between the operating systems. So if you're up dealing with the browser UI, for the most part, like all the logic, you really don't have to worry about things like whether or not the processor does big endian or little endian, like all that sort of weird processor stuff. You really don't have to worry about it. There's like this abstraction library around things like threads and processes, so that Whenever you tell Gecko, I need a new process, it just goes, okay, well, I've made you one. And you don't have to really worry about what the underlying operating system is. And periodically, like, we just kind of have, it's not perfect. Like, it'll be a little leaky, and you have to go, like, if OS X do this, if Windows do that. And we try and avoid those if we can, but sometimes you just have to. The hard part, I think, is in the UI, because you want to make the UI feel native. For a long time, I think Mozilla didn't feel native. Like, all the buttons looked really weird. Like, if you think back to like the original Mozilla Suite or like Netscape Navigator, all the buttons looked really kind of cartoonish and strange, and they were. And because they wanted it was kind of like Java, where they wanted it to look the same. They wanted a consistent experience across different operating systems. And it was consistent, but it was consistently alien. It was consistently weird. It didn't feel right no matter what. And so there was this conscious change of, well, let's try and make it feel as native as we can. Let's try and like hook into as much native stuff as we can as humanly possible. And so we'll do things like in the dialogues, like we implement the dialogues that show up, but we know that on OS X, the guidelines say that the buttons have to be arranged in a certain order. Like OK and cancel, I believe, are reversed with the ones that Windows uses, for example. And like we have to have code that does the switching and detects it. And we don't want to like, if OS X do this, if Windows do that, every time we make a dialogue. So there's this abstraction library again for like dialogues, and it takes care of all of it for you. So I'd say it's mostly the challenge is making sure that it feels native is the challenge, is my opinion. And dealing with weird platform inconsistencies can be a pain in the butt. So one thing we've noticed for Electrolysis, the project I'm on, is that the way we do shared memory for graphics, like we have to have this shared region of memory. And on OS X, apparently it's like hard to do or something. I don't really understand, but like shared memory is very difficult or something. And so we use like the file system. It's a really it's not great. We use the file system as a kind of weird shared memory thing, and we pass file handles around, and that is really slow. And we've identified that as a major performance bottleneck. And so we're trying to evaluate alternatives. We're looking at like what the other browsers do. We're looking at what other large programs do to try and fix this problem. And that's only like that problem only affects OS X. OS X. Like we're able to do shared memory a lot more easily on Windows and Linux. It's just on OS X this weird thing happens. And like sometimes on Windows, weird things happen. Like the way that so dealing with printing is really different for like on my stream. If you've watched my stream, I've been dealing with a lot of printing bugs. The printing APIs are very different between OS X, Windows, and Linux, and or GTK Linux, and you kind of have to like be as native as you can, but try not to drive yourself crazy and do it 3 times. You know, like you try and find an abstraction, and it's not perfect. Like I'm looking at this printing code, and clearly someone had this idea of like, well, let's try and make like this one common space, and then we abstract it out so that every platform can do. And it's like, it's kind of a disaster. And like, there's like, it's really over engineered and crufty and hard to understand, and I know that there were good intentions here, but it's very difficult to analyze this code, and I think that's hard, you know, just dealing with these platform inconsistencies, and you kind of want to make sure you're not the one who has to deal with it. You kind of hope, at least in my mind, that you're up at a level where it's just kind of abstracted away, and you just do something and it works everywhere, and you don't have to worry about it. But there are definitely teams at Mozilla whose job is to like make it work for Linux, make it work for OS X, make it work for Windows especially. And like there's a team of people working on, I think there's a bunch of contributors trying to port Gecko and Firefox from GTK2 to GTK3. And that's like a bunch of work. And it's, you know, that's hard. It's hard to do, to move a massive application like that. And it's all like volunteer contributors doing that. And like huge applause to them. Because like I could not do that ever, but congratulations to them.
A few years ago, I wrote a Tetris in like Qt, and Qt is like a very great framework for doing C++ cross-platform programming. It abstracts a lot of stuff, but well, I tried to compile the program on Windows, and it was just horrible. I think I spent a few hours just trying to compile, so I can only imagine how hard it is for projects such as Firefox
I'll tell you what we did. We gave up. And instead of like trying to use Visual Studio and like the Visual Studio changes, and like I think we're starting to more support Visual Studio and stuff, but we basically have this Ming GW32 shell. We basically brought Linux to Windows. We like brought Cygwin over, and we're like, it's got Make, it's got GCC. We'll just use this. And
I tried using this, but I still spent like 5 hours or so.
And
it's
like
still not perfect.
And it builds really slowly. Like, sad to say it, but like building on Windows takes forever. Like it's the most, it is easily the largest percentage of our user population uses Windows, like by far, but it is definitely the hardest platform to develop for.
Yeah, so do you use MinGW for production build? Or do you use some Visual Studio?
I'm pretty sure we use, like when we build for like releases of Firefox, we're using like the Visual C++ compiler, like the Microsoft compiler. And I'm actually pretty sure that we're not using GCC now for Windows. I think you have to download like Visual C++ Community Edition or something, and you have to download the Windows SDK and like all these things. And it's still pretty slow, but it builds. And I'm pretty sure we use the same kind of pipeline for releases of Firefox as well. But then we have to do like all the signing stuff to like make it legit and all that business. It's all mysterious to me. Like release engineering and building is a mysterious black art that whenever I have a build problem that is like in the build layer, like I have no idea what's happening. It's like it's a black box, and I have to like go up to someone and say, "Have you seen this before? Help me, please." And luckily we have people who understand it, and I think we're trying to make it better. But like sometimes our build system is really weird. I think the people who work on it right now would tell you that very much so. But it's certainly gotten better over the years. There was one fellow named I won't name him, but like he looked at our build system and was like, "Nope, this is all wrong," and he like rewrote the whole thing. And it was way, way better. He wrote, like, we went from makefiles to, like, preprocessed makefiles, this crazy tree of preprocessed makefiles, to this really cool tool called Mach, using, like, Python that's very extendable, and kind of, we've got this nice sort of rolling progression of making our build system a lot less insane. And it's gotten a lot better in the past, like, 2 years. So at some point, someone just like goes, "I can't take it anymore," and they just build a new tool to fix it.
Yeah, building C++ code isn't fun, especially across multiple systems.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have some experience working with C++ code. So for example, in Yandex we had CMake, but people wrote a really nice set of macros, and I never had to deal with this CMake system. I just copy-pasted a bunch of macros, and yeah, so it was kind of mysterious to me. So sometimes it's great that there are people who know all this stuff, and just can make your life easier.
And like in my experience, macros are great when you know what they do, but when you're trying to debug them, it's like, where am I? Like, what is this code? It's like weird metaprogramming. I don't have time for this. I'm just trying to make my feature work.
Yeah. So, what do you think about Rust?
What do I think about Rust? I've only ever done the Hello World. I think it's a really good idea to like try and do new things in systems programming languages. The idea of making it from the design of it from the bottom up, more, I guess, instead of going from we've got this pre-established language, okay, now let's figure out how to do multi-threading and concurrency. You have a language that was developed for concurrency, and so safe concurrency is now all of a sudden this thing that is like a first-class citizen in this ecosystem. So it's very easy to spawn up threads and like send things safely between them so that you can do neat new things like build a new web browsing engine. So there's a team at Mozilla Research building Servo. And Servo is a next-generation web browsing research project to build an engine. I don't know if they're calling it a research project anymore. I think they're actually like thinking that they might build a thing. So great. And there's a fellow here who works in the office, and I've seen him like render part of Wikipedia, and it was really, really cool because like he was able to show me this image of how the web browser rendered it using multiple like threads. Normally layout is done on the main thread, and that's why sometimes whenever you do what's called a reflow, or you have the web browser recalculate the position and like the size of certain things can be very slow, and it blocks the main thread. It's like this it can be a very huge calculation that takes multiple seconds in the worst case to like figure out what's happening, and then ka-chunk, then the page shows up. And now he was showing me that we found a way of doing this layout in multiple processes, so you can parallelize a lot of it, which is really, really cool. And that's not something that Gecko or WebKit or Blink or what's Trident, that's the Internet Explorer engine. I don't think any of those do this like concurrent layout stuff because I guess they're long in the tooth. That's like a big change to like change the layout engine of web browser is like basically refactoring the spine of the application. I mean, along with layout, graphics, and JavaScript, I mean, that's basically your, like with the event loop and stuff, that's your web browser. And just taking layout out and like refactoring it completely is a non-trivial task. So like creating a new browser from the ground up, a browser engine, from the ground up with this neat idea of doing concurrent layout. It's a breath of fresh air. I'm very excited to see where it goes. I don't know where it's going to go, as with most things. Like I can't predict the future. No one here can predict the future, but we're hoping that, you know, maybe it has the potential to be faster, smoother, maybe even less battery intensive or power draining. Potentially, I don't know. I'm making big, vague promises. It'll be like the best thing ever. I don't actually know, but let's see what happens, because all these browser engines, WebKit, Trident, Gecko, like all these web browser engines were designed not without factoring in the assumption that modern machines have multiple cores. You know, and now that we know that modern machines have multiple cores, maybe we should develop a new engine that takes advantage of that fact. And what does that look like? Like, what new cool things can we do with the web, with this idea? And so Rust is just reached 1.0 today. Happy birthday, Rust! Just turned 1.0. We did it, people. Congratulate, thumbs up. And
no more breaking backward compatibility.
That's right. That's the promise. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I'm kind of watching from the sidelines very eagerly to see like cool demos and stuff. What I would really love to see is for someone to take like the browser.html thing we were talking about and like stick Servo onto it so that you have this like web browser UI and then you have Servo using it. I actually think someone did that. I believe someone has done that. But I want to see like people play with that and like, what does it do? How does it feel? Like, I want to give it a shot, basically. I want to try this browser out. I want to see how it performs. And, like, I don't think we would, like, just wholesale throw up our hands and give up on Gecko or something. I think we would start to, like, take these ideas that we've developed on Servo as and try and migrate them. Like, take pieces of it, bit by bit, and bring them into Gecko is the idea. Like, there is a goal for this year. I'm not sure if it's this quarter or if it's this year, to like replace a non-trivial part of Gecko using Rust code. And I think the first target is the URL parser. So there's like, we use C to parse URLs and like figure out stuff about URLs. And I think the idea is to build a parser using Rust and have that built into the browser and to have that ship Rust in Firefox doing something somewhat innocuous, parsing URL strings, and we'll see how it goes. Like, I'm really excited. And then who knows? Maybe all of the C++ knowledge I will have learned this entire year will just get thrown out the window because now we have this new language to learn. So that could happen. We'll see.
Yeah. So I was trying to find this cool blog post by Servo team, and they basically wrote some sort of update on the current state of the project, and they mentioned that they basically managed to implement something like web browser core, something like rendering engine. I don't know anything about web browsers, like how they work internally, but they mentioned that they did it in in a small amount of code, something like 100,000 lines, as opposed to like 1,000,000 lines. So Rust code is a lot more compact than C++ code.
Cool.
And so, which is great. I was trying to find it, but I can't. Sorry, I won't be able to share it in chat. But it's really cool, and some people really
good.
believe that Rust is like the next.
It's good. Like new things. I like it's great that we have like all these really cool browsers now. Like even Internet Explorer, Microsoft with Edge, or Spartan or whatever they're calling the browser, Edge I think is what they're calling it. That's really exciting. Like new browsers are good for the web. More competition is good for the web. Whenever Firefox showed up and sort of Microsoft was at the 90% or whatever percent market share and we showed up, that was good for the web. When Chrome showed up, that was good for the web. Everything's gotten a lot faster, a lot better. And now we have this nice spectrum of really fast, awesome browsers for users to choose from. And this is all good for the web. So I'm really excited whenever I see something like Edge coming out or Servo being worked on, or I know Vivaldi is like this browser that I believe some ex-Opera people are working on. That's all really exciting. I think it's really, really good for the web to have all these alternatives. Although I'm pretty sure Vivaldi is just using Blink, but like alternative web browsing engines are good. They're good for the web. You don't want a monoculture. I know as a web developer, it's nice to be able to have a single browser engine that's consistent. That you can just say, like, I know how it's going to render. But for the web itself, that's not so good because you need to have, you don't want to give someone that much control. We tried it, and like we saw what happens to the web when one company, in this case Microsoft, has too much control. And what happens is they give up, like they die. You need the competition to like to push people and to like keep it open. So I'm excited by all these new browsers. I'm very excited.
Yeah, but this was Microsoft. Let's say someday, at some point in the future, Mozilla gains like the vast majority of market share. Like for some reason, just speaking hypothetically,
okay.
At like 90% market share or 95% market share.
Bad for the web.
It will be bad for the web.
That's bad for the web. Yeah, I think ideally we would have something like 25 to 30% market share. That's probably our best spot.
So you don't want to monopolize the web?
No. Variety is good for the web. Variety is good for any ecosystem. Mozilla is not looking to like dominate and like be the number one browser in the world. I mean, we definitely want to build a really good browser. We want to build a browser that people use. But in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, what's good for the web is competition. What's good for the web is variety and choice. Like any ecosystem, if one animal just eats all the other animals and then just falls asleep. I don't know, it's a very good analogy, but like you need to have the competition to like move things forward. And so I think Firefox being at like 90% market share is no better than Microsoft being at 90% market share. Although because we are a non-profit, maybe it's a little bit better. Maybe it's because we wouldn't have like shareholders to listen to. We could like really do some pretty neat things. Like we could say like DRM, nope. Like not in the browser. Like we can make some pretty decent calls, but I'm pretty sure, in my opinion, anyways, variety is key to any ecosystem. And so, I think if Firefox was at 25 to 30%, that's the best.
So that's actually a pretty interesting view. I mean, I would expect you to say that you'd like to have like the majority, but not be like not having 90%. I expected you to say something like we'd like to have like half of the market. So that was actually pretty surprising.
That's my opinion. Yeah. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I understand. So you're not speaking officially. By the way, so did you sign any NDAs with Mozilla Foundation or Mozilla Corporation?
I believe I did. I believe I'm NDA'd, but that's purely for things like business deals. So I can't talk about like things that we've done with partner. Like there are various things that I just like I can't say. But no one likes that. We like talking about what we do, and if anything is like, oh, everybody don't tweet this. You can sort of feel this audible groan of like, oh, Like, who are we working with now? Who doesn't want us to say things? And we've had to kind of get used to that, especially with like dealing with partners. Like with Firefox OS, we're working with a lot of like I don't know if we're working with carriers. We're working with certain partners that, like, in my opinion, they're not used to working in the open. They're definitely used to working, behind closed doors. They do stuff and then they ship it to the user, and that's a great model for them. But it's not what we're used to, and so we kind of have to like find a nice middle ground. And sometimes, like, the only way they'll sign a deal is if they're like, you can't talk about this stuff until it's shipped or something. I'm like, really? Fine. Really don't like doing that. But for the most part, like, if it's in a public repository, if it's in like Firefox Desktop, I can't think of the last thing that was in Firefox Desktop that we couldn't talk about. In fact, we talk maybe too much. If you go to planet.mozilla.org, that's like the main RSS feed. Like that's the sort of centralized feed of all of our blogs, and people blog all the time on Planet, is what we call it, and we talk about everything, and we'll talk about like new ideas, and sometimes it's to our detriment. Like one of our previous designers was working on a new way to illustrate or to show downloads in the browser, and he was like, here's a napkin sketch of it. And he put it up on Planet, and that's great. He's allowed to do it. And then like Safari shipped it within a couple of weeks or months or something. Well, we hadn't staffed it yet. We just thought it was a cool idea. And they took the idea and they did it. And they showed it worked. It was a really cool UI. And we're like, God damn it. Like, being open sometimes loses you the edge in certain things. But in the end, that's who we are, is like, we have to be open, and eventually we ship the download button. That's actually something I worked on with the little progress bar inside it and stuff. So eventually we shipped it as soon as we got enough attention on it, because we're small, and there's not too many of us, so we rely on contributors out there to hack on Firefox, and we just have to be pragmatic about the projects we choose. So,
yeah, I understand it. Sometimes you have to keep stuff private.
I don't think people realize how small we are. Like,
how many people are there?
Working on desktop or just in total at Mozilla?
In total and on desktop.
Let me think here. We've actually grown relatively quickly in the past couple of months because of Firefox OS. We had to bring a whole bunch of people on to build an operating system, basically, and so we really staffed that up pretty hard. And work with hardware and stuff, because we didn't have a whole lot of expertise in the area. So I think my guess, this is a guess, is that we have something like 1,000 people working for Mozilla, and that includes foundation, that includes corporation. So that's like the people doing outreach and advocacy and fundraising and educational stuff for foundation. That's all the engineering, that's staffing, that's accounting, that's human resources. I think we're 1,000 people, which is tiny. We are up against juggernauts that have tens of thousands of engineers working on a product that they're humongous, but we have to be small and nimble. In a way, being small gives us an agility sometimes, but we have to be very pragmatic about what we do. Now, how many people work on Firefox? I actually don't know. There are various parts of what I would consider Firefox, and then there are parts of where are called Gecko, it's the platform. So people who work on the front end of Firefox, I'd say there are 20, 30 people, something like that. That's my guess.
30.
Yeah.
That's a very tiny number.
It's a very tiny number. The people who work on platform, that's not just Firefox, though. That's people who are basically working on Gecko. So that's graphics and all the stuff that Firefox OS might rely on. I think that's a larger number. That's probably a couple hundred people. But even our graphics team, the people who are in charge of making sure that things get painted to the screen and it's done really quickly, I think that's a pretty tiny number. It's we're small. We're really small. And that's just because, we're not a big company that has a whole bunch of shareholders throwing money at us. We're small.
Do you think it would be better if there would be more people working on Firefox or working in Mozilla? Say, would doubling the number of people who work at Mozilla now help?
I don't know. I think like getting more contributors, more people out there who are really passionate about Firefox and Mozilla and the mission working on Firefox is always a great goal. And I think that would really help. Like the more we can scale up, because like we have goals on how many contributors we can get onboarded to like get involved. And that's like people's job here. There's definitely someone in this office whose job is to get people like to be in love with hacking on Firefox. And like making it really pleasurable and really easy and like so that they get something out of it. So it's like I've really contributed to something. Now I've got something really cool on my resume. Like he wants to create that ecosystem where it's really easy to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
And but just throwing people at a project doesn't necessarily make it go faster. Like I think
I agree.
So I don't know. We have to be pragmatic. I don't know if it would make it go faster. Maybe it would. Maybe after a while. But like I know that as soon as you add people to a project, like you add a ton of people to a project, everything slows down. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, everyone's kind of learning and up ramping, and like we're trying to organize like how are we going to do stuff, and like there is a nice agility in being small, but at the same time there are things that probably could use some more staffing. But I don't know what they are. That's outside my pay grade. That's way above my pay grade.
Okay. So let me check if there are more questions. I don't know. I feel like I ran out of questions. I know. Oh, there is like I don't know. It's kind of an open question. Like, what are some fun facts about Firefox or fun facts about Mozilla? Like, I don't know.
Fun facts.
Like something interesting, something funny.
Okay, well, I can tell you about an Easter egg. If you go
or Easter eggs.
Sure, I'll tell you about an Easter egg. If you go to About Robots, that's maybe an old one. About Robots, here, I'll type in the chat. Here are some Easter eggs about robots.
Yes.
About
It
Mozilla.
says something in Russian. Well.
Yeah, what else do we have? Okay, this is one that we added relatively recently. I'm just going to let the people in. I'm probably breaking some rules, some like inner circle here, but I'm just going to do it. So if you go into the menu panel, that's the 3 lines in the browser UI, and you click Customize, it allows you to reorder things in that menu and in your toolbars. If you take everything out of the menu panel and then exit, when you open the menu panel, you should probably see a little unicorn bouncing around in there. That's the Whimsycorn. That's our kind of like our mascot for fun and playfulness and whimsy. And if you click on it, it spins around. I think if you mouse over it, it colors, and then when you click on it, it like does this little flip. And someone did that over a weekend because the menu panel was part of like a long haul project called Electrolysis that took forever, and I think some engineer did that on a weekend because he wanted something fun to do. So we'll let that land. So periodically we'll like add a new chapter to the book of Mozilla, which is in About Mozilla. I think there is a wiki page that like has every single chapter or quotation from the book of Mozilla. It's just like weird. It's almost like like apocalyptic language that is really strange. I don't know why it's there. There's like this really weird feeling to it. Like it feels really dark. But that's part of our history is this About Mozilla page, because I'm pretty sure it's been there for like the entire time Mozilla has existed. It's been an About Mozilla. I don't know if that is fun or interesting enough, but
it's fun and interesting. But that's what I was asking about exactly. Cool. Like some fun cultural things, or like some interesting features in C++ code base. Like back when I was working in Yandex, and Yandex is a Russian company, so there are people who primarily speak Russian, and if you don't know about how coding done in foreign languages, everyone just uses English. Like no one uses Russian words. It's considered bad style. But Yandex has a really old code base from 90s when there was no standard library. So there was a custom string class, and its name was like string in Russian, something like Straka. And well, it's somewhat weird. Sometimes people like want to rename it. And I think like a few years ago there was a time when someone like almost renamed it. But at the same time there are people who really love this. So it's kind of a weird cultural thing. So yeah.
Cool. That's the sort of thing that people will bike shed on for like forever. It's like, what should we name it? What should we name it? Let's name it this. Let's name it that. Let's keep it. Let's throw it out. Let's replace it. Yeah. Everyone's got an opinion.
So yeah, I know. Well, I kind of have some other questions, but I guess if there are no questions in chat, I will ask like 1 or 2 questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So people in chat, please ask your questions because you have probably like 10 minutes. I will also keep an eye on Twitch, on YouTube. So if you have questions, again, just post them in chat. And kind of have a couple more small questions. Oh yeah, I have a question, Vim or Emacs? And what editor do you use?
Vim is what I'm far more used to. I've used Emacs by accident before, and I didn't know what I was doing. I knew enough to quit. I was just like, shoot, I'm in Emacs. Control X, Control C, something, and it closed. So that was good. I know people who swear by Emacs. It's one of those like long-standing religious wars: Vim or Emacs. I know people use both, but I'm used to Vim and the Vim key bindings. I learned it in school, I think. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking, like, this is the worst text editor ever. This was back when, like, I was using gedit primarily. And gedit's a fine editor. It does exactly what I needed it to do. It had a nice little tree view on the left. It had terminal on the bottom. I could write, like, some Python, whatever. It's very, very nice. And, but I remember I started using Vim because, like, someone else on my team was using Vim, and I wanted to be cool, so I started using Vim. And, like, I learned some really cool things. Like, he showed me some neat things that I could do that I couldn't do in gedit. Like, there's this key combination, CI, that allows you, like, replace things between quotes or any character, really. Like, and I thought that was really cool. But then I started using Sublime because apparently there are key bindings, and Sublime is cool because I could have tabs, and I know you can have tabs in Vim if you install like a certain extension, but I kind of liked the look of Sublime, and the extension framework was, I don't know, it seemed like the packages that were being, I don't know, it was the cool new thing. So I started trying using Sublime. I eventually paid for a license, and now I use mostly Sublime. Although whenever I use my Ubuntu VM, I use Vim just out of habit.
By the way, Vim has some tabs by default. If you type tab new, and then you can use GT and Shift T to switch between tabs, but they're not quite the same thing. So it's not quite tabs in other browsers. For example, it works weirdly for splits. It doesn't work very well with splits. So you kind of have to use either tabs or splits. But yeah, I mean, I use them. I'm pretty happy with them. So yeah, there is a way to use that, but it's not perfect.
Yeah, I try not to get into like the religious wars between like Vim and Emacs and Git and Mercurial. I know people are very opinionated, and like engineers seem to be very opinionated people, and I understand that. You want to like care about your tools and you pour your sweat into these tools, but in the end, like, can you get your job done is what matters to me. Like, does it allow you to write text that will compile? Yes, use it. Like, it's fine. Use whatever you need.
Yeah, like before we started stream, some people suggested that I ask this question as, what's your favorite editor and why is it Vim? So
well, it kind of is. I mean, I am using my Vim key bindings in Sublime, and I feel like I'm able to move a lot faster. In gedit, I really relied on the mouse a lot to move around, and in Sublime, I'm using mostly my keys, so I feel like I can move faster.
Okay, so again, some would kind of, well, not really question, more like an open topic for discussion before people either ask some questions or we end the stream.
Okay.
So let's wait for this question. And so you mentioned Emscripten, which is, if I remember correctly, like C++ translator into JavaScript, something like that. So you can run your C++ code in the browser.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned that you did a project in Emscripten. So what do you think about this project?
Okay, well, I will post a link to my really awful game that I ported using actually a pre-built tool called like DOSBox allows you to run old DOS games, and there's someone had already like compiled DOSBox to the web with Emscripten, and then they had like these cool packaging tools that basically allow me to port any executable that can run in DOSBox to the web. So it was something I just kind of knocked out, but it was mostly using other people's work. It was quite simple at the time, anyways. It seemed to be, and so I will post a link to it right now if people want to critique my really awful game. There it is. And so I used Emscripten. I've used it before to try and like. I'm a fan. I think I mentioned of point-and-click adventure games, and there's this thing called Scum VM, which allows you to play old-style point-and-click adventure games using like it's using like SDL. It's like basically they've clean room reverse engineered all these old adventure game engines, and then you can play them using Scum VM. So like Sam and Max, The Dig, Day of the Tentacle, like the old LucasArts stuff, and then you got the Sierra stuff like Space Quest, King's Quest, etc. Full Throttle from LucasArts, all these really old games you can play on modern hardware. You can actually play them on like phones and stuff. And I thought the Scum VM thing was really cool, and I wanted to port it to the web. And I got a reasonably far amount of, like I got it to compile to JavaScript, and I thought like, holy smokes, I did it. But one of the problems was that you have to redesign some of your code if it uses if anything blocks. Like if anything is relying on blocking the thread that it's currently on, it's not going to work because you can't block the main thread in JavaScript. Everything has to kind of be non-blocking. So it's got to be very event-driven. And I got stuck on that. But then someone else, like a couple months later, must have had the same idea because someone else compiled Scum VM to JavaScript. You can actually play those old point-and-click adventure games in the browser. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I thought it was neat. I think it's a really neat idea. You can like move things from, like someone compiled Vim to JavaScript. A lot of it's like almost like code stunts, like JavaScript stunts. Like, can I compile it like the Linux kernel to JavaScript?
Yeah,
yes,
you did this.
Yes, you can. It's like it's a stunt, and like that's great. Maybe someday we'll, instead of having like process per tab, we'll have operating system per tab. I don't know, but I think it's neat stuff. The researcher who works on it, Emscripten is a Mozilla tool that was developed by this researcher named Alan Zakai, and one of the coolest things I've ever seen done was they compiled this first-person shooter engine called Sourbauten, I think is what it was called, to JavaScript, and they called that the Banana Bread project. And so all of a sudden you're able to like play this first-person shooter in your browser without plugins, and that was really cool. And then we worked with like the Unity people on the Unity engine. We were able to get them to like, I'm pretty sure we worked with them. I'm pretty sure you can now like compile your game written in Unity to the web, which is really neat. And the same thing with the Unreal Engine. You can compile to the web now. And so all of a sudden you've got these games that up until now you either had to like download an executable and then install it and then go through the install procedure. Now you just go to a URL, hypothetically go to a URL, because I don't know where the future holds, but I think it's something like this, at least for like demos and stuff, where you really want people to try it. You hand someone a URL or a link, they go there, they see a progress bar while it downloads the binary, hopefully it's a fast connection, boom, and it's running, and you didn't have to install anything. Like that's kind of the promise here. And it's also running in something relatively safe, which is JavaScript. You know, that's one of the nice things about ASM.js versus something like Native Client, where Native Client, despite all of the protections they may have put up, ASM.js compiles down to JavaScript. And JavaScript is something that is battle tested. You know, our JavaScript engine, certainly, you know, vulnerabilities will be found when we patch them, but you don't want to have two different languages or two different things that you have to patch with vulnerabilities. Now we just have the one thing, which is the JavaScript engine that we have to like keep secure, and you can run your web page on it. You can also run this 3D game, and so we have this single thing that we have to maintain, which is really nice. So I think Emscripten is really cool. I'm curious to see what other people are able to compile to JavaScript. I know the Internet Archive has been working on I think it's the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine people, I think, have been working on
I think it's kind of both. I think Internet Archive is an organization and Wayback Machine is like
the product. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it's them that are like finding all these old abandonware games and like porting
Yeah.
them to the web and like hosting them. These old like Atari video games, they were like, we've lost the source code. No one knows whose property is this? No one knows. We'll port it to the web and see if we get a legal letter. We'll see. I don't know if that's their position. Maybe they've done the legal work. I don't know. But like, there's all these really cool old games that have been ported to the web, which is, I think it's really neat. And it's good because some of those old games are really good. And at the same time, those games are what inspired me. Some of those games are what inspired me to make video games. So who knows? Maybe one of those games will inspire some other person to like say like, shoot, I want to make one of these things. I'm going to become a programmer, and then they like make the new best web browser engine after a couple of years. Who knows? Who knows? Like, we need more people building things. That's it. That's my spiel.
Yes. So there was a question in chat.
Yep.
So just like if you're writing terminal GUI app using Emscripten or Tembox, how would you abstract each screen? Are you using functions or are you a named loops kind of guy?
Let me think about that for a second. Terminal GUI app using interests. How would you abstract each screen? Are you using functions or are you named loops kind of guy? I have never done that before. Like the last time I made like a UI in like terminal, it would have been in DOS, first of all, and using BASIC. And so I didn't know anything about like named loops or stuff. Like I was using a lot of GoSub and GoTo. I'm not sure how I do it.
Here on my screen, so you can look at this. I saw some terminal code because it was like ASCII window or something somewhere at the end of the code. Yeah, here it is. In Venbox, press escape to leave menu. So it's pretty great. I mean, it's really nice that you posted your old code.
It's really bad code. It won't compile. Don't even try. I'm pretty sure I'm missing a library, and like, it's bad code, really bad. But I mean, that's what I started with. It's like we can all start from somewhere, and like, even though it was bad code, what I consider now to be bad code, it worked. Like, it was entertaining. My sister liked the game, at least at the time. My friends found it entertaining, and in the end, if the binary or whatever it is, it works, then who cares if the code's bad? The only time you do care is if you need to fix things in it, you need to maintain it. Just, I'm one of those developers who really enjoys seeing something happen. Like getting to done and like seeing a thing happen. So, sometimes I like to think that I write clean code, but sometimes I get seduced into like just making something work. And sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you'll go back and try and clean up the technical debt, and that can happen. But I think every developer is different. Anyway, so he was asking about named loops, and he said that named loops are kind of like go-tos. So I guess that is kind of an answer. Although nowadays with my current, like, I'm used to JavaScript and stuff, I'm pretty sure like the name, like the little jumps, like I think there's a way, I think they're called labels, where you can jump to a part in the JavaScript. I think those are like something you're supposed to avoid. And so I'm more used to methods now, like or functions. How would you call it? Using functions. So I'd probably, if I was like doing it, my first instinct would probably be to use functions. But if you asked me like 10 years ago when I was younger and I was doing stuff with BASIC, I would have been like, I'll use GoTo, I'll use GoSub. That's like the only tool I've got. So.
Okay, so there is a question from YouTube. When will Firefox OS be available on phones in the United States?
I don't know. I have no idea. I know that that's a thing that people here are very interested in, but and I know that's got to be on someone's like list. That's got to be on a roadmap somewhere, but I don't know when it'll happen. And I'm not saying that because like I can't tell you. It's because I just don't know.
Okay, thanks. So I guess let's wait for a couple more minutes, and I will ask my last question.
Sure.
Since you mentioned about inspiring other people to program, what advice do you have for people who are just starting to learn programming, who don't have professional experience, and they're just starting?
Don't get distracted by the noise. Like there are a lot of developers out there who are very opinionated, who might seem a little bit pushy. They might not even realize they're being pushy. They might be bossy. They might not even realize they're being bossy or hostile even. And they don't know. And that seems to be something that just exists in this culture. And just try. We're trying to make it better. I believe we're trying to make it better. Just ignore the haters and build your thing. Like just try and build a thing. Build something small. Start small. Get it so that you've built something. And then even if the code, if you think like, oh, I wrote the worst code ever, you built a thing and that's cool. And now build something a little harder and just build up. But the most important thing is to start. You have to start somewhere and don't be afraid of starting. Starting is often the hardest part. And if you're watching this and you're going, I don't know if I could ever be a programmer. I could never work at Yandex. I could never work at Mozilla. I can't work on Firefox. We all started from somewhere. And I know people who switched out of like they were doing something completely unrelated and they were just like, you know what, screw it. I don't like law. I'm going to start programming. And then they like 2 years later, now they're working at such and such a company writing software. You know, like that can happen. But the most important thing is to start. And there are lots of great resources on the internet. So like the Mozilla Developer Network is where I'd normally point people because I've got my Mozilla hat on. But like that will tell you things about JavaScript and the web and HTML and CSS. And there's like, I think developer.mozilla.org is like a great starting point if you want to learn web technology. There's also another great resource called khanacademy.org where if you want to learn like basic programming, basic concepts, the fellow who invented jQuery works there, and he's been helping. His name's John Ressig, and he, I'm pretty sure, like there are interactive tutorials on how to like do basic programming and get yourself started. There are things like Code Academy, which I've never used, but I heard good things about. There are lots of resources, but the most important thing is to try. And I know a lot of people out there are like, maybe they work a day job and they don't have time. They're exhausted by the time they get home. There's like, I don't have time to try and learn how to program. If you can solve problems, I think you can do it. Like, I believe in you is what I'm saying. I think you can do it. You just have to ignore all the noise that's out there and just try and build a thing. And forgive us for our crappy documentation. Maybe help us make it better because the documentation can be pretty bad. But like, try and fight through it, and I believe you can do it. There are great communities out there. R Learn Programming, the subreddit, is a great community. Ask your question. Someone might have a really good answer that can help you out. And if someone tries to hassle you and say, you're doing this all wrong, you're going to be a shitty programmer because I'm on Stack Overflow and your way sucks, ignore them. Like, just get it built, get a thing built, and you'll learn. And listen to other people, listen to their criticism. But if people are being jerks, don't let that be your reason for giving up. Like, try not to rage quit. I know it's really hard to rage quit, or it's really hard sometimes. And it's very easy to rage quit something like programming, but just stick with it because once you know how to do it, like you're like a wizard because you can like these codes that we type in computers are like spells, and you can do all sorts of crazy things. Like you can make a Facebook thing. You have all of these powers and your ideas become manifest in this thing that you're typing on. You can do it. It's just you have to go through the sort of bullshit Hogwarts stuff to learn like how to become a wizard, Harry or Hermione or whoever you are out there. Just like get started is my advice. So I don't know. I got on a soapbox there. I'm sorry. But this does bother me at times that some people in our industry think that, well, you have to be doing this since you were 6 years old, or you have to be like programming since a really young age if you want to ever have a shot because you're competing against people like that. And that is not true because I know plenty of people who have been programming from a very young age and they're okay. They're pretty good, but they're not like the best in the world. Similarly, I know people who've been playing hockey since they were really, really young and they still play hockey for fun, but they're not in the NHL. Like, yes, it's good to learn when you're young, maybe that like you get some fundamental foundational stuff, but like if you just start, you just need to start. And if you're 10 or if you're 30, all you just need to do is start and then you will build from there. Just get that kernel started, that little snowball so you can build yourself into someone who can like build things, a wizard, a witch, whatever you want to call it.
This is actually a really great advice. I agree 100% with it. Yeah. One thing I noticed, I don't know, for some reason, I don't have personal experience, but I read blogs, and one thing I noticed is that sometimes, and for some reason tied to gender, maybe I don't know why, but sometimes I notice like a blog post or question like there's some girl that comes to um, some sort of a club or comes to like, more experienced programmers, and she's inexperienced, which is, and even she may be in high school, so she comes to some sort of high school club, and for some reason she like feels insecure or inadequate, and what's surprising is that she feels like something inherently wrong with her, but most of the time she just speaks with people who have like several years of experience, and if she like keeps doing for several years, she will have that much experience. And I know maybe that's maybe other beginners feel the same way, but basically people that you're talking to, or people that post on the blog, post on the web, they are not inherently smarter than you. They don't like. To me, it seems like many like programming is like 90% about experience, like maybe 10% about talent. So, well, I guess my kind of point that like keep learning, keep gaining experience, and eventually you'll learn, and eventually you will become the sort of person that seems to be that great.
Yeah, build a thing, build stuff.
Yeah,
build stuff is the most important thing. And like our industry, our community has a problem with, I don't know, like there is a sexism problem. I'm pretty certain of it, and like we need to solve that. We need more variety. Variety is how you make, like I said this before about browsers, variety in terms of who is building stuff is also that also matters as well as what's being built. So like everyone should be builders, not just like privileged white dudes who grow up like playing video games and start programming at 6 years old. Like that's great that you did that, but we need other people programming as well, because we need everyone's vision to be made manifest, because like computers are, whether we like it or not, around a lot of us right now, and like they run a lot of stuff, and I think it's going to be as important to exercise mastery over all of this technology as it is to like learn how to read and write at some point. And like there is a thing such as technical literacy, and I think it's important that we make sure that we have a variety of people who are technically literate who can build all this stuff, because like I'm at risk of getting on a soapbox again. I don't want to do that, but basically if you are a minority out there, I'm talking to you minorities. If you are like a racial minority, an ethnic, or like maybe you feel like you're on the margins, you are female, or you are transgendered, or you are like anything that's not like considered what a programmer is, I think you can do it. I think you can build stuff. You have to just drill through all the crap out there because there is a lot of it, and a lot of people who are going to tell you can't do it. You just have to push through it, and I'm so sorry that crap's there, but you got to push through it, and you can build something. I think you can do it, and I don't know, we have to make it easier, and the more we show that like everyone can build stuff, the more people will start building stuff, and then the more people will know that they can build stuff, and then we have this nice little bootstrapping thing. So like so just to reiterate, I think you can do it. I believe in you. You out there who doesn't think you can be a programmer, I'm talking to you. You can do it.
Yeah, and learning can be really frustrating sometimes. So even people who have lots of experience, they went through this phase when this new language was really frustrating to use, or this new library was really frustrating to use. So programming can be frustrating sometimes. So that keep learning, keep doing this.
Yeah.
So I have another question to ask, which is kind of open-ended. When you started working in Mozilla, did you learn something knew about programming, like some new special insights, or did you just gain more experience? Like, was it there? Is it this more about quantity or about like some qualitative difference? Maybe
Well,
you're already experienced enough, but
not really. Like I'd worked at a like a government. I worked for the government on like internal web applications. So I had some PHP. I had some JavaScript. I knew HTML and stuff. And whenever I was working there, I mean, they just wanted me to solve problems. They basically threw me into a closet and said, like, build this thing. We don't care how it works. We don't care what technology you use. We just need you to fix a thing. And like that made sense for them, and it worked, and like they were able to get stuff. But whenever I started working, and that was for internal applications, not for stuff that's like given to the public. Whenever I started working on stuff that has like real users, like I think at the time Thunderbird had something like 8 million users, 7 million daily users or something. I don't know, or maybe it's 20. I don't remember, some number of millions of users. That I remember being like, holy smokes, that's a lot of people. I'm pretty sure I've never written anything that had that many users in my life. And now, like, I have to ship software that could make or break their day because people use Thunderbird to like check their email, and that's an important part of their day. And so it's a little paralyzing, but you have to like work on a team. And I was collaborating with people. And so we would review each other's patches, and we'd write tests. And like that's not a thing I did at the government office. So I had no code review, no peers, no tests. It was all like, except for manual testing, it was just like build a thing and I hope it works. It seems to work for me. I don't know why it works for you. Good luck. But at Mozilla, when I joined up, I think I really learned more about how the sausage is made in terms of like quality control, like making sure that the code is like a couple of people have looked at it and thought about it, and like everyone's aware of what's going on, and like we have to write tests and continuous integration. Like land it. Did it pass all the tests on all the platforms? Have people tried it? Have users tried it on the Nightly channel? At the time, it was called Shredder, is what we called Thunderbird, because we thought it might shred your email, because that's what Nightlies sometimes do. And I learned a lot about like the pipeline and how you go from like an idea or a spec for a feature or something to like making it and putting it out there to millions and millions and millions of people. And it was scary, but also so satisfying. When like my first thing shipped, it was like something silly. I think I like shipped like a really simple reordering of things in the add-ons manager for Toolkit, which is like something that Firefox and Thunderbird share. We share some code between the two. One of those things is the add-ons manager. And I changed the way that it orders certain things. And it's like I changed the sorting algorithm. And when that shipped, it was like the best. Even though it was something that I'm sure no one noticed, I was like dancing in the streets. It felt so good. And I felt confident that it was going to work because, people had reviewed it, it had been tested, and then it was out there. And I do think like one or two, that'll happen. Like people will find problems in your stuff and you have to kind of like take responsibility for it and follow up. And like, if it's a real bad emergency, like I've caused regressions in my time. I'm not perfect. I've definitely shipped things that have been broken. And we kind of like go, well, shoot, what's the most pragmatic thing we do? Are we going to do a point release? How important is this? Can we kind of like put up a blog post and apologize? Like, what do we do? And usually we'll do a point release. We actually have a pretty decent QA process to make sure that whatever we ship, we're pretty sure it's going to work for most people, like whatever's going out there. But, stuff goes wrong and you kind of have to own it and investigate it. And so that's the big eye-opening experience for me, was dealing with like the humongous user base and like the whole variety of hardware that they're running on, and the weird bugs that they run into that no one else can run into because of their weird setup, which is a perfectly valid setup, but we don't know how to create it in the lab. So like, what do we do? Like, so dealing with real users and like just the quantity of users was very eye-opening for me, as opposed to at the government office where I was shipping like a program to maybe 50 people, 20 people, which at the time was like a lot of people depending on me. And I was like sweating over stuff and like, oh, is it spelled right? I don't know. Like, will it work? And like, cause that's a lot of people to a kid straight out of school. And, but like, I think I'm done with my answer. Yeah. Just shipping software to a lot of people was very eye-opening in terms of how the sausage is made.
Yeah, I agree. When I started working in Yandex, and Yandex was my first job,
Mhm.
I've done some programming, I've done some competitive programming, I wrote a few apps, but one surprising thing that I learned that like reading other people's code is like a separate skill. Like writing code and reading code is two different things, and which was pretty surprising. I'm not sure that I've got this correct. Do you feel the same thing? Like, do you feel that writing code and reading code are two different things?
Yes. Yeah, it's two different muscles, I think. And
Yeah, I agree.
sometimes I'll like read my own patches and wonder like what was I thinking? Like that's an exercise that I'll do is whenever before I pass my patch around to someone else to review it, I'll review myself because reading it myself, oftentimes I'll find defects. Like I'll go like, oh, you know what? This doesn't make any sense at all. No, I'm all wrong. And I'll give a self review because as soon as I start reading code, I go into a different mode. Is the way I feel about it. Like I'm more critiquing when I'm reading. I'm trying to like basically compile it in my mind as I do it, and I'm not necessarily doing that whenever I'm writing code. So I do think you're right. There's two completely different things. At least for me and you, I guess. Can't speak for everybody, but
yeah, because I needed to ask someone, especially if not from, for example, Yandex. So, any tips for reading other people's code? Like, do you have any tips?
Yeah, be kind. Be kind. If they've given you the opportunity to read their code, be a nice person. Thank them for the patch. Maybe it's not exactly what you want to land, but critique the code. Do not critique the person. Like, be a conscientious code reviewer. Be mindful of how your comments might be received, especially if this person you do not know, because they've gone out of their way to make a patch for you, or like they're showing you their stuff. And so don't like. I know sometimes it's tempting to like I even feel it when I look at my old code to be like, this is shit, this is garbage, and like show off and be like, I know all this cool stuff now, and I'm going to tell you how to do it way better. But there's a jerk way of doing that, and there's a good way of doing that. And I try and err on the side of being a good person and assume that, if someone doesn't do a thing, either they have a good reason or they just didn't know. And everyone can't know everything, so be kind, So be kind when you're reading other people's code, but be hard on the code. Like, don't just let things by. And what else? Don't just style nitpick. If you're style nitpicking, you should probably write some kind of linter to do it for you. Pay attention to the architecture. The architecture is interesting. And think of edge cases. If there's a loop, are we sure it will exit? Are we ever going to try and get outside the bounds of this array? When you allocate something, when will it be deallocated? That's a big one for me, especially because I'm relatively new to C, I guess, is like as soon as I'm so used to garbage collection that as soon as I allocate something, I'm like, okay, well, hold on. Before we continue, when does this thing get deallocated? I need to sort that out right now. And I need to make sure that it happens and like test it and make sure that it gets deallocated. Yeah.
Yeah, memory allocation is a very difficult thing.
Yep.
So there are some ways to simplify this, and in C++ there is this whole concept of ownership, which is pretty much explicit, and I think Rust fixes this to some point because they made this more explicit, which is great.
Yep.
So anyway, we have another question, like how does it feel like to work for a non-profit? Like it's kind of buried now, so I'm going to copy and paste it here.
Yep.
Just for convenience.
There's something here where it's like the dream of every core that does open source.
Which is so many people want to work on open source. It's like a dream for them. Like some coders, if they have $1 million, would work on some open source project.
I wake up every day feeling like I've pulled a fast one on the world. Like I feel so lucky. Like I've been working for Mozilla for like 4 years now in one form or another. And every day I wake up like feeling like the luckiest person on the planet. I know I'm probably making it sound like you should, like, we're the best. And like, I'm certain there are like really great tech companies out there, but like, at least for me speaking, I'm so happy every day. And I feel like we are doing good in the world. Like, I feel like I think we are important for the web because I'm pretty sure there's no one like us who is this invested in taking care of the web. I'm pretty sure. And I wake up and I feel like I am making a difference. Whenever I ship something and I see someone using it, like I walk by and I'll see them using Firefox and like they'll click a button and be like, I made that button. Like I like deep down I'm like, yes. I don't actually tell them that I made it. I think that would creep them out. But like it's very satisfying work, and just knowing that I'm not just making a stock price go up for some company feels really good. Like whenever I had a couple of opportunities to work for some different companies, and they were all really cool companies, and they were doing cool things. But Mozilla was the only not-for-profit. Sorry, I think there is a distinction between the two, and I'm pretty sure we are a not-for-profit. Mozilla was the one I selected because I felt like I could really wake up in the morning and feel good about myself. That I'm not just trying to sell more or trying to make the bottom line be like, we got to sell X number of units, or we have to convert this number of users or something. It's like, we just need to make the web better. Can you fulfill the mission? Like, the mission is what guides us, and like, it's like, that's the Kool-Aid, is the mission, and like, and that's what we care about in the end. I don't know if I answered the question, but I feel great. That's my answer. I feel great. How does it feel? It feels great.
No, it's really great answer. It's like really great. So I guess there are no more questions, and we have been streaming for like 2 hours and a half.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad because this entire water bottle was full when I got here, and it is now empty and inside me. So like, I don't want to be indelicate. I have to use the washroom, so
okay.
Wouldn't mind cutting this off.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
All right.
So yeah, it was really great to talking to you. You gave some really great advice, and you had really great answers. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope you people in the chat and enjoyed working this too.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I think this is a really, really cool idea, and I really appreciate you putting on this show and talking to me. And like, I will be listening to more of these as you do more and more. So I think this is a good idea, and I like what you're doing. So keep it up. And like, I'm pretty sure you made Watch People Code, the subreddit.
Yeah,
I think that's so cool. Like, that's like the coolest thing ever, and like so many people are doing cool things on it now. And I think that's
I agree.
I'm really excited by that. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone who's listening. If you're out there and you want to make a program, do it. You can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah, keep learning. Programming can be frustrating, but keep learning. Eventually it will get easier. Yeah. Trust me, I've went through many of these learning phases, so it gets easier.
Yep.
So yeah, it was really amazing to talk to you. So
let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, so people who are watching this, if you like this stream, if you like this idea about talk show, please subscribe. There is like a huge annoying form at the top of the page, which I need to restyle all that thing, but well, there is a big annoying form. Please subscribe there. Yeah, the recording will be available like in a few minutes, although there was some issue like somewhere at the beginning of the stream. So I will upload the whole recording. So thank you very much for watching, and well, bye.
Take care.
Yeah, bye. Again, to save the streaming.
Okay.